Hey, what's up guys? This is David from Automotive Custom Lighting. Today we're going to show you how to take your universal light bar harness, your 2-wire setup, and turn it into a 3-wire setup. Now this will work on pretty much almost any harness that you see out there, from Amazon to eBay to some of your well-known manufacturers. Everybody always goes to a 2-wire setup. We need to convert this to a 3-wire so that it works perfect for your Ranger and General. So the first thing you want to do is take your harness and kind of lay it out to see what you have to work with. Now, a majority of your harnesses should look like this. If it looks any different than this, I would say reach out to us first before you go cutting into stuff, or if you don't mind, just go ahead and chop it up. First thing you got to do is take off this heat shrink. So the biggest problem is just right here. Now, I don't know why a lot of these manufacturers don't go ahead and create this. I'm assuming it's to save money, but that's the whole reason why we create our harnesses. So you want to go ahead and cut this off. You want to make sure you don't cut deep where you cut all your wires. You just want to cut the heat shrink where you could remove it pretty easily. Alright. So after you remove the heat shrink, you're going to notice that right here, one of your positive wires has 2 wires on it. This is why your light bar, if you have a light up switch, it always stays on, is because of this wire here that goes directly to the positive post bar. Now, a lot of y'all try to wire this up to your keyed ignition in the middle, and then this one over here to your ground, and you're always going to blow your fuse. You don't want to do that. That's the biggest mistake you would do when hooking up any type of lighting accessories, is putting your main power on the keyed ignition, because that's only a 10 amp fuse. Your main fuse is a 40 amp, so that's what you want to make sure you have your main power there. So the next thing you want to do is, if there's a zip tie here, like some of your better companies, they like to add a little zip tie there. Go ahead and cut that off. So what you got to basically do is take this extra positive wire and separate it from the positive that's running to your main power. So in this case, to make things simple, I just snip this wire. So you want to snip it as close as you can to the head. Now you can de-pin this wire if you want to. That's solely up to you to get it cleaner in there. But yeah, that's all you gotta do, snip it. So now you separated your light up switch from your constant power. So this is where you're gonna take your yellow wire and connect it to the white wire here, and then this will go to your keyed ignition. Now, depending on how you have things or what harness you're using, this part might be a little bit difficult, but we fish it right on down, and as long as you have it, all the creases out of it, it'll slide right on through. So I've already slid it through to this side. So I just pull all the slack through. So this will be your 3rd wire. So now y'all looking at it and they're like, hey, this looks a little familiar now. We got 3 wires. You got your keyed ignition, ground, and positive. And then of course your fuse for the light bar itself. So go ahead and pull all the slack through. Now this part, what you have to do is you have to connect both of these wires together. So this yellow wire is going to connect to this white wire. Now you could either solder it, crimp, whatever the case may be, but most of the time we solder. So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to do a crimp. So I'm doing a non-insulated butt connector, and then we're also going to need some heat shrink to make everything look pretty clean, which I seem to have misplaced my heat shrink. I could have sworn I had a piece out here. Ah, there we go. I knew I had a piece here. Alright. Alright, so you want to take your butt connector here. I do use non-insulated because it's a little bit thinner. It's easier to heat shrink it. It looks a little bit better. Go ahead and crimp it. Now I'm using the wrong size crimpers here, so I'm having to basically double crimp just to make sure that it's good. Alright, so the next part is you want to take your heat shrink, slide this over your wire, because if you crimp this, and then you won't be able to put your heat shrink on. I've done that dozens of times where I had to recut my crimp off just to put the heat shrink on. So after you get it crimped, you always want to tug on this really good to make sure that you did get a good solid crimp. If you have a loose crimp on here, it could definitely cause problems in the future. Go ahead and slide your heat shrink over it. And I like to have a torch here. Go ahead and torch that heat shrink. There we go. Alright, let me go get my other handy dandy torch. Alright, round number 2. Let's see how this torch works. There we go. Alright, so you want to make sure you heat shrink this. So now you have the yellow wire connected to the white wire. They're separated. What I like to do is I like to take this yellow wire, slide it on down. And I try to make this part past the bin so it doesn't put too much pressure on that actual connection point. So I pull it actually down into it a little bit. And then there we go. So now we have 3-wire connection. And it's actually looking quite nice. So now at the other end, what I end up doing is cutting all 3 of these the same length. And you got 3 wires here. Now you could buy these plugs from me, the pulse bar plugs. You could buy them with pigtails already on them with us crimping them, or you could buy them with the pins yourself and you can crimp them yourself. It's whatever way you want to do it. So we actually go through and actually crimp these pins on here so it looks a lot cleaner. Now the crimpers we have are not the exact correct ones for this, because the ones that are meant for this is actually a crimping machine, which I don't have the money to buy one of those things right now. So what we ended up doing is actually just crimping the pins directly on. Now I'm not going to go into detail exactly how we crimp these. Now we're using a couple of mixed tools here just to make sure that this crimp is not going to pull back off. And then what I typically do is take the wire seal and slide it over the metal piece. That's not the proper way to crimp these pins, but it more or less makes sure that they don't come off. Alright. Alright. And then slide that over this piece. The actual proper way to crimp these would be to slide this grommet over. Then you take this back part and then this goes over the grommet, so the only part that actually holds on the wire is this first set of teeth. The back one's supposed to go over this rubber seal and hold the rubber seal in. But because we don't have a machine to line it up right, and because there's various thicknesses of wires here, that ends up actually creating a failure. These pins will come off quite easily when you only have one layer holding it. So we like to crimp both of them on the wire and just slide the seal over the pin. Alright, so now you have all 3 of these, and the next setup is actually pinning this. Now the easiest way to pin it, like you can see right here on the pulse bar, is either look at one that you already have done, but your top pin is your ground. So as soon as you slide it in, you should hear it lock. Your middle is always your keyed ignition, so that's where your yellow is going to go. And then the very bottom is going to be the red. Now you could tell you always get it in right because you can hear the click. When you hear that click, you know you've done the job right. The last thing to do is to put the retainer lock on. Now this part could be a little bit tricky depending if you have those seals in on the back side, but I typically like to line it up like this and just kind of work those seals. You can use a flathead screwdriver to go in and kind of push those seals in a little bit better. It's whatever your preference is, and you'll hear that snap on, and that's how you add the connector. So now all this is looking just like it should, and that's pretty much the majority of what you have to do. It's literally taking the one wire, snipping it, adding a third wire, running it in with the loom. The only thing I have to do right now is just add some heat shrink over this and call her a day. Now you can go through and add a zip tie back over this. It's just to add extra so you don't pull on the pins and stuff like that. That's all your preference. I know when we make these, we typically add the zip tie back on. Add your heat shrink over the connector. Now typically before you want to add the heat shrink on, you would want to test it to make sure you didn't screw something up. In this case, I've done hundreds of these, so I know exactly what needs to be done. And also this is going to be a little toasty right now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The last part to do would be the other side where you go to add your switch on it. Now that portion of it I'll do in a separate video because you have several different switches. You'll have your L series, your XIV series, depending on which way you want to do it, depends on how you want to pin it. Now I do have one that's finished right here so I can kind of show you. Typically you would have 3 wires come out of here. You have your ground. This is the wire that triggers your relay. This is now your keyed power. This is that wire that we changed over from constant hot to keyed power. Now for the L series switches, you want to add a little jumper wire which comes up to the top so that it adds a illumination. So if you're looking on your L series switch, it'll illuminate the bottom of your switch. That's what this little orange wire is. So from the white wire, you want to jump it to the top pin. Your blue wire runs back out to your relay harness, so when you kick it on, it turns it on, and it only works with keyed ignition. Now if you're using like the XIV series, it's wired up a little bit different, which we do have diagrams on our website and diagrams on our Facebook page that you could click on to view. But yeah, this is it. If y'all have any questions on how to do this harness, or if you'd like to buy a harness directly from us pre-made, feel free to give us a call or visit our website. Now if you found this video to be extremely useful, make sure to share it. Share it around in the Facebook groups, the forums. Let everybody know this is the proper way to wire up your light bar. Now if you have any other comments or questions, feel free to drop us a message, give us a call. We'll definitely help you out. But in the meantime, we'll continue to produce other content. Any other videos or suggestions that you could think that we could do, let us know in the comments.